The year is 2006. The Xbox 360 has been the hot new thing for about a year at this point. People are ditching their original Xboxes in droves in favor of the 360.
If I had a baby, I'd trade my baby in for this thing.
Little did they know they would also be ditching their 360s in droves in just a couple years as well, but you know.
Son of a bitch! What the? Oh my god!
And luckily all this mass upgrading had made it make sense for my family to finally pick up an original Xbox at an affordable price. 6-year-old me couldn't care less about the fact that it was technically last gen. Within my little world, which had been dominated by nothing but a SNES up to that point, the Xbox was advanced alien future technology as far as I was concerned. And who could even blame me for thinking that? Have you seen the boot animation on this thing? Nightmares about the green blob getting me aside, just navigating through these cryptic-looking menus and hearing this mysterious background ambience was so incredibly captivating to me. Up until now, it had never even occurred to me that a game console could have a menu, let alone have one that I could just be content sitting down and exploring. And the big menacing stature of the console itself really tied everything together. Both the hardware and the software seemed like they were built specifically to appeal to every gamer's, as dumb as it sounds, darker bad guy side. And to me, the Xbox represented an outstretched arm beckoning me to leave the warm and fuzzy cocoon of Nintendo games. It was time to put down the SNES pad, pick up a Duke, and see what Microsoft's new world had to offer. But you know what they definitely didn't offer? Factor. Are you tired of toiling away for hours in the kitchen, chopping, prepping, and searing your eyeballs in the process? Do you wish you could spend hours in the kitchen cooking, but you're absolutely skillless with a skillet? And what are you gonna do when there's no time to go out or make something from scratch anyway? Yeah, you've got that emergency military-grade mozzarella stick box in the freezer, but boy, are you gonna have a different kind of emergency if you make those again. Factor is a godsend of a service that delivers fresh, never frozen meals right to your home. Gone are the grocery store trips, gone is the hassle of cooking. You get to choose from a weekly menu of over 30 dietitian-designed options that cater to different diets like keto, vegan, and more. All of the meals are chef-prepared and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. The first one I tried was their grilled steakhouse filet mignon with Parmesan creamed spinach, roasted asparagus, and Asiago butter, and it was fantastic.
Really good.
Use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use code POGBringusJewel50 for 50% off your first box. And once you click, my description will live update to count up the purchases. Fast forward to now, and the original Xbox is still remembered as one of the greats, although it is an aging one. This thing's pretty much a 22-year-old Pentium 3 PC at heart, and they're all kind of starting to have 22-year-old Pentium 3 PC issues now. Most notable being this clock capacitor leakage, which can spill this yummy capacitor fluid all over the motherboard and turn your Xbox into an Xbox. And if the clock capacitor blowing up doesn't get it, that spinning rust of a mechanical IDE hard drive probably will. And you know those controllers that you've been wrapping up the wrong way for 22 years? Yeah, well, that leads to the wires inside cracking and breaking apart, and next thing you know, you're either soldering together a cable to fix it, or you're playing Twister to get the connection stable every time you want to use it.
Hey!
How about that belt in the DVD drive drying out and falling off? That's kind of an important component to break, considering not only do you have to open up the Xbox to fix it, but then you'd also have to go and open up the DVD drive too. That sucks. I think the Xbox may have accidentally gotten CC'd in the email about how DVD drives are now considered vestigial organs in the modern era. It kind of just decided, well, I guess I don't need this anymore. And next thing you know, you're reliving your 6-year-old life of doing nothing but navigating through the menus, except this time it's not nearly as entertaining. But what if I told you there's a better way? There's a greener pasture than the one you're about to put your dying Xbox down into. A magical world where you needn't worry about ancient hard drives or rely on these outdated media formats. It's the world of Homebrew, and the Xbox has a vast one. Although I do want to say that you do still need to yank the clock capacitor regardless, because Homebrew cannot fix that. And if you haven't taken that thing out already, it's probably already blown up in your Xbox, causing all kind of havoc in there as we speak. So if you haven't done that yet and you want to learn more about what you can do to get rid of it, I'm going to link this video in the description where they show you how to remove it and then clean the motherboard up. It's not that hard if you have the right stuff. But you do have to do this. It will destroy your Xbox.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting.
And you know, while you've got this whole guy open to take care of that, let me show you something. This is the SATA to IDE adapter, and it's the key to replacing this old 8GB hard drive that's in there. An 8GB hard drive. That is insane to think about. Anyway, there are some hoops you have to jump through to get a new drive installed, since by default the Xbox is very particular about locking and unlocking the drive that it boots from, and it can be very temperamental about it. There's a lot of guides out there at this point that go over the whole upgrade process, and there's a few different routes that you can go down. They're pretty much sorted based on how likely you are to burn down your house if you have to pick up a soldering iron. In mine, I've got this 320 gigabyte 3.5-inch IDE hard drive that I installed probably like 10 years ago at this point. When I upgraded mine, I opted to do the extremely convoluted Xbox HDM method, which requires a decrepit computer and some sketchy hot swapping shenanigans between the Xbox and the computer. It was horrible, but it didn't require any soldering. And at the time, I absolutely was someone who would burn their house down if they had to pick up a soldering iron. So this was great. That was the most accessible method that I had to get it done 10 years ago. And I haven't had to upgrade my hard drive since, luckily. From what I can gather about it nowadays, you're probably best off doing something called a TSOP flash. It'll rewrite the BIOS in a way that lets you just kind of plop in a new hard drive and be on your way for the most part. There is some other stuff you have to do to get the OS back installed, but it's not that bad. And when it comes to soldering, you only have to bridge one connection on the motherboard, which is nice. However, if you're still looking at your soldering iron and thinking, wait, how much does my renter's insurance cover again? There's also this middle of the road option, which doesn't require any soldering. There's a tool called Chimp. It does still require a Molex power cable splitter and more hot swapping, but no computers needed, just a soft-modded Xbox. And I do want to note that by far the best option if you want to upgrade the hard drive is the TSOP flash. If you're truly that scared of soldering, then either A, use this as a character building exercise and do it anyway, or B, some people have had success using something called conductive glue to bridge those solder points. I have never used this, but I do see it recommended sometimes. There's also all kinds of dedicated mod chips out there that do all kinds of crazy stuff, including the functionality that a TSOP flash would effectively give you. But I really have no experience in that field at all. I've never messed with them, so instead of regurgitating some stuff of dubious accuracy that I read on some forum to you guys, I'm gonna leave the coverage of those to the people that actually know what they're talking about. Okay, so you've got your Xbox open, you've got your clock capacitor removed, you've got your shiny new hard drive installed, but what about that pesky broken DVD drive? Here's a super easy way to deal with it. Don't worry, I didn't actually throw it in the garbage, it's just a joke, don't get mad at me in the comments, I swear to God. When you have a modded Xbox, you can finally let go of that horrible, flawed media format. Say it with me, everybody.
Optical media bad.
But wait, there's a plot hole in this story. If the DVD drive is broken, then how did this Xbox get soft modded in the first place? Because you need an exploitable game like Splinter Cell, and you can only boot that game from the DVD drive. But it doesn't have to be this particular DVD drive. If you have a mod chip, for the most part, you can toss in any old IDE optical drive and burn a copy of Splinter Cell with your PC and then boot it that way, which is another pretty cool use case for mod chips. But the main character of this story can't solder in a mod chip. Not anymore. So what can he do? Well, his best bet is probably to try to repair the one that he's already got. If he's lucky, it's just the belt in here that needs replacing. If he's unlucky and it's the laser or one of the motors or the controller board, he might just be better off buying a used drive on eBay and hoping that works well enough for one last use. After all you need to do is boot one stupid game, and then the drive can go in the garbage. Because with his newly modded Xbox, he's gonna be playing games off his hard drive, baby. That's the reason I upgraded my hard drive and even soft modded my Xbox to begin with. Even a small 320 gigabyte drive like this one will hold around 60 or so Xbox games, which is way more than enough for me. But I didn't fill my hard drive with Xbox games. I couldn't even think of 60 games I would want to play on the original Xbox anyway. Honestly, all I really need is Madagascar up to the point here where you can play the mini golf game, then I'm pretty much set, that's all I need. But either way, once you mod your Xbox, you can play a hell of a lot more than just Xbox games. NES? We got those. Super Nintendo? We got those too. With the original Xbox, it becomes more of a question of what can't you emulate? The Xbox has been a titan of game emulation for a really long time now. It's pretty common to see them used in both home and real arcade setups. Thanks to the nearly off-the-shelf Pentium 3 CPU that's in the Xbox, Homebrew developers had a fantastic starting point to port over most existing emulators that were already running on PC. From what I've gathered listening to videos from the likes of MVG, some of the hardest parts of doing this were implementing virtual RAM management trickery to get around having 64 megabytes of RAM to work with. I'm sure it also helped to have illegal SDK access, but, you know, I'm sure none of the good folks over in the Xbox Homebrew community would leverage that to their advantage, right? All the Homebrew on the Xbox is clean room, right? Right, guys? Uh-oh. Okay, real quick, 2 questions for you. Do you know what historical revisionism is? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to be willing to collude on something with me? Fantastic. Anyway, yes, all of the emulators and Homebrew on the original Xbox are developed by devs who use only legally obtained code and tools.
No, they don't.
In reality, it doesn't really matter. Anything that gives the homebrew scene higher quality software gets a pass by me, believe me. I wouldn't even be surprised if Microsoft couldn't care at this point. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Emulation on the Xbox is great. Surreal 64 is one of the best examples of this. Not everything is going to work right off the bat, but you've got a few different cores to choose from based on the game that you're playing to widen the compatibility of it. It combines a handful of different emulators all into one. And a console even being able to emulate its competitors' previous gen hardware, it's just such a huge flex, and I love it when this happens. This is even how I played Super Smash Bros. 64 for the longest time, believe it or not. I also had a modded Wii at this point that I could have run it on, but I hadn't quite drank the GameCube controller Kool-Aid yet at that time. I preferred this monstrosity instead. And as great as N64 can be on here, I do still prefer the Wii. The Wii seems like it has just an ever so slight edge over the Xbox. But hey, it's not done yet. Not only can the Xbox emulate N64, it pulls the same trick off on Sony too. The performance for PS1 is pretty hit or miss though, to be honest. I mean, because you can see right here, Resident Evil runs perfect, unless you pull out your gun, which for some reason then the FPS goes to like 7, and then you put it away and it's back to 30? I don't know. And then Crash Bandicoot here runs, I guess, I don't know. And Gran Turismo, I mean, can you even say it runs if we're measuring it in seconds per frame here? Still though, the fact that it's doable at all is pretty sick. It's not the best way to play PS1 games, but for a select few titles that do run really well, this is a pretty dang good way to experience them. It's just gonna be way too hard for me to go over all the best parts of emulation on this thing because, well, there's just too much to cover. Any system that you can think of under the sun that was made before the Xbox probably has an emulator on it. And you're not even limited to traditional home consoles either. You wanna emulate the Wonder Swan? Sure, why not? It doesn't even have to be a game console. You want to experience the Macintosh Plus to finally immerse yourself in... Well, with the Xbox, reality can be stranger than fiction, just for you. The arcade machine emulation scene is also pretty huge here. Again, think of any system made before the Xbox and it's pretty much here. When it comes to older emulation, I'd almost argue that the Xbox is the best console out there to mod to do it. It's really close between the Xbox and Wii for me. Emulation aside, another gigantic draw to the Xbox at the time was its media center potential. Ever heard of Kodi? It's a pretty popular media center front end, I'd say. Well, Kodi started life out on the Xbox as XBMC. It hasn't been updated since 2016 on the original Xbox, but it's still the most modern looking thing on the Xbox today, I would argue. They can even still stream content from my Plex server too, which is kind of crazy. I mean, not very well. 64 megabytes of RAM doesn't get you very far these days. But for the lower bitrate stuff, it actually does work. Obviously, you're not going to be seriously consuming your entire 4K content library on this thing, but back in the day, it was the killer app for modded Xboxes. I mean, think back to 2002. The practice of ripping DVDs to store movies digitally was just getting started. Netflix was a small movie rental company that only served up DVDs, and watching a decent quality video, let alone a movie, over the internet required a whole day of premeditated downloading, depending on your internet connection. So playing back your digital library was going to have to be done locally on the machine that's connected to your TV. You're not going to be streaming that. And if you didn't have an Xbox to do it all on, playing your ripped DVD files on your TV would require hooking up your PC to it, which is not nearly as simple to do as it is today with HDMI. Then you have to clunkily navigate around in Windows to play, pause, enable subtitles and stuff with your movie. And if your PC just wasn't near your TV, well, tough shit, you're not watching your movie without burning it back to a DVD and then sticking it in your DVD player. Which entirely defeats the purpose of trying to play back your digital copies without optical media. So you can probably understand why people chose not to live in that hellscape, and instead, they just modded their Xbox, installed a bigger hard drive, ripped all their DVDs to it, and enjoyed their awesome all-in-one media center solution. But say you're just not into watching movies on your Xbox. For those committed to not living a life of leisure, there's also Linux on the Xbox, because why wouldn't there be? It's not very usable, I couldn't really tell you one thing you could do with this, but if it wasn't here, it wouldn't really feel right. You know what I mean? Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the hard drive utility chimp that I was talking about earlier, that also relies on Xbox Linux. So let's see, we've gone over the hardware, emulation, Homebrew Media Center apps, and what would a homebrewed console be without ports? There's a handful of pretty cool games that were ported over to the Xbox, and we'll get this one out of the way. Yes, it runs Doom, very good. Yes, Doom, okay, moving on. Something way cooler in my opinion is Half-Life. And it's working, actually, don't get distracted by the missing textures on the NPCs and weapons. This runs really good. And it's not my install here that's messed up. This is just a known limitation with the port. The dev just barely couldn't get everything working here with only 64 megabytes of RAM, and textures on the NPCs and weapons had to get sacrificed to get it to run. There is a build for Xboxes with upgraded RAM, which does work better, but I've heard that it's also slightly unfinished. Anyway, other than these guys repping Tyler McVicker's merch store, this port runs pretty good. It's locked to 60 FPS the entire time. It plays like it was just made for this thing. And after all, the Xbox did have an official release for Counter-Strike, which from what I can see also runs pretty well, so I'm not all that surprised. Man, it runs a lot better than Half-Life 2 does on the Xbox, that's for sure. And another game that I'm really enjoying checking out every time I make one of these homebrew videos is Super Mario 64. Not under emulation, but running natively. Super Mario 64 has been reverse engineered for a few years now, and it can be natively ported to just about anything. It's like the next generation version of Can It Run Doom at this point. And the Xbox here runs Mario 64 pretty dang good. I was able to get it running in 720p as well, which is great. It does cause a bit of a slowdown in some areas, but overall it was fine. And I had checked out the Wii port of Mario 64 previously, and this is how that went. And I've been told that the Wii port has had some work done since I last looked at it though, so a lot of these issues have been fixed. Like the Wii version though, I did have to also compile this version myself, but the dev for the Xbox version, just like the Wii, also has a Docker that takes care of pretty much everything for you. All you gotta do is provide a ROM for the assets, and you'll be playing your favorite plumber on the Xbox. The Xbox really just is one of the greatest consoles for modding of all time, I think. It's super cool how devs are able to utilize this outdated PC hardware. I mean, 64 megabytes of RAM, like, come on, dude, that's insane. Anyway, sorry if this video is a little bit shorter than you might have expected. I usually like to look at original community-made games when I make these homebrew videos, but for the Xbox, I couldn't really find any that was worth sharing. Plus, it's been pretty busy with all these sticker packs that you guys have been buying. Thanks again for that. Oh, that reminds me. I just launched a spring store that you can find in the description. There's all kinds of stuff in there, from Bringus hoodies to grandma on the PSP and to whatever this is. It'd mean a lot to me if you checked it out. Plus, LTX is coming soon and I gotta get ready. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video nonetheless. Thanks to all my patrons for the support. Join the Discord and keep on trucking, gamer.